If you've watched my channel for a while, you'll know that I talk a lot about Canadian law. And if you know anything about Canadian law, you'll know our courts are fucked. I made a video called Trudeau's Mandatory Trans Bikini Wax about a Muslim woman who was up for a human rights complaint for refusing to give trans men bikini waxes. The University of British Columbia is at the center of multiple human rights complaints. The school's former director of the Human Rights and Respectful Workplace Department has filed one complaint. A UBC professor filed another complaint after she was fired. Why? Well, she refused to change the diapers of a fecal-obsessed adult baby in a Curious George outfit. Then he went to HR complaining of discrimination. By the end of it, he was threatening to file complaints against the HR, and now he has. And the thing is, they'll probably all win. And how a man who identifies as 3 years old, wears a soother, and demands children's books has a place at a top Canadian university? Well, you'll need to see my equity means more than equality video for that. Then there are the 5 suspected terrorist detainees who have been awarded over $10 million settlements each. Sure hope that money goes to a good use. Then in Pirates of the Canadians, I talk about how an RCMP sting operation made a Somalian kidnapper a Canadian citizen, and how our parole system means anything less than a life sentence means you'll be eligible for parole before you're even sentenced. And I haven't even got into the petty crime in Canada. The street level crime is getting horrendous, and the police refuse to do anything about it, sometimes saying they simply won't come. Someone recently stole a truck full of tools from our property. Police happened to find it from an anonymous tip, and at the location were other stolen vehicles and stolen merchandise, stolen goods. Over $100,000 worth of stuff, easy. The thieves were out on bail the next day, and were at our property, our truck, recovering stolen goods. We found them on the property and managed to stop their vehicle and take some of our belongings back. The police didn't execute a search warrant on the house, which the landlord was nice enough to let us search for our stuff. So literally, these thieves were out on bail before the cars could be impounded, before the property could be recovered. How is that for justice, eh? The police made no effort to help us recover our stolen goods, but they made damn sure to give the criminals an expeditious release. In 2013, a Syrian immigrant to Toronto was aboard a bus when he decided to lean forward and slash the neck of a young girl, whose hair stopped the blade. He then chased everyone off the bus, threatening them with a knife. The police arrived on scene, asking if there was anyone still on board and calling for a taser. When the man with a knife approached them making threats, they shot him. After a Change.org petition, started by Tarek Fatah,
Yeah.
I'll tell you why.
The officer who shot Sammy Yatum after calling for a taser, and apparently not receiving one, was sentenced to 6 years in prison on attempted murder, acquitted of second-degree murder. His appeals have since been rejected. This sentencing had widespread approval in Canada, and spawned the hashtags Pray for Sammy and Justice for Sammy, the innocent little throat slasher. It's okay if beheading infidels is part of your culture. You don't believe me? Well, that's the reason for this video. From the Vancouver Sun, student whose throat was slashed in UBC dormitory alleges negligence in lawsuit. So here we have another random throat slashing. And judging from this image here, it looks like we have an incel attacker. A young woman whose throat was slashed inside a University of British Columbia student residence has filed a lawsuit against the school alleging negligence. The notice of civil claim says Mary Hare was inside her room in Salish House in October 2016 when international student Thamer Al-Mustadi entered carrying a knife. Al-Mustadi's trial heard he knocked on the 19-year-old's door, slit her throat, and started choking her before other students pulled him off. What's this caption here? University of BC student Thalmer Al-Mustadi was found not criminally responsible for the attack on Mary Hare at the UBC dorms. He has since returned to his native Saudi Arabia for treatment. A court found the teen not criminally responsible because he was suffering from a psychotic episode in which he believed the Quran had sent him a message to kill a hare. The motherfucking Quran told him to do it. So he's not responsible. And Saudi Arabia is the perfect place to go treat that. He can go on a fucking pilgrimage to Mecca. He can go take the Hajj. Is he praying for forgiveness for doing it or for fucking it up? The lawsuit says UBZ should have been aware of forced entry and assaults in dormitory rooms, and the assault occurred due to the negligence of UBC, and not the crazy fucker from Saudi Arabia, who invoked the Quran while he slashed a girl's throat. The BC Review Board discharged Al-Mustadi from a psychiatric hospital earlier this year in order for him to return to his home country of Saudi Arabia, where his parents had designed a treatment plan. I'm sure they had. And I'm not the only one with these sentiments. I see the Canadian justice system is as tough as ever. Guy beats an attempted murder rap by saying, the Quran made me do it. Let's hope Justin Trudeau doesn't reward him with $10.5 million for doing this. So what do we do about this? Nothing. There's nothing we can do. We're fucked. Why? Well, look at Canada's electoral system. During the last election, Trudeau's party got 39.5%. The Conservative Party got 32%. That 7.5% difference led to an almost 100% difference in the number of seats. So although the New Democrat Party got 20% of the votes, they got 13% of the seats. With 5% of the vote, the Bloc Québécois got 3% of the seats. See, Canadians don't vote for the Prime Minister. We vote for our regional members of Parliament. Whoever wins that regional election counts as a seat to elect a Prime Minister. One of Trudeau's primary election campaign promises was electoral reform to proportional representation in voting. From the CBC, Liberal fears of proportional representation and a referendum killed Trudeau's reform promise. Senior party source explains government's decision to scrap important campaign pledge. Now this is interesting. Fear of both proportional representation, including the possible emergence of fringe or even alt-right parties, and a potentially divisive national referendum, led Justin Trudeau's government to abandon his promise of electoral reform, according to a senior Liberal source. In the lead-up to the 2015 election, Trudeau pledged that a Liberal government would ensure a new electoral system was in place for the next federal vote. The Liberals regularly repeated that promise through their first 15 months in office, but on Wednesday, the government announced electoral reform was no longer a priority. Trudeau said, the more he thought about proportional representation, the more he thought it was exactly the wrong system for a big, regionally and culturally diverse country. In the House, Trudeau said reform might produce an augmentation of extremist voices in the House, a potential result that is sometimes associated with proportional representation. The Liberal cabinet is said to have been overwhelmingly opposed to proportional representation, which aims to allot seats in the legislature in proportion to the national popular vote. Ministers, the source said, believed Canada was better served with broader, big tent parties. The source added, the ministers were concerned that proportional representation could open the door to smaller regional or fringe parties in the House of Commons, including the alt-right, a loosely defined political movement that includes white nationalists and white supremacists. The specter of such a party holding the balance of power in Parliament is said to have been raised. They won't let you take power. They won't let you run for election. And if you do, you'll get the Donald Trump treatment all the way up. And frankly, few of us have the resources, financially or otherwise, that Donald Trump has. They also decided that it would be irresponsible to hold a referendum. Why? Well, a referendum could be divisive. Establishing a vote threshold for the implementation of reform could set a precedence for future reforms. An electoral reform that needed only a simple majority could, for instance, be cited to justify a similar threshold for any future referendum to Quebec sovereignty, something that would undermine the Liberal position that separation shouldn't be so simple. So say you set that number at 60% instead, and that number still wouldn't be acceptable. That would be too divisive. 70%, some unattainable electoral number. Would that be too divisive? Setting the bar too high isn't a good look either, but you gotta give us a chance. But it's right there in black and white. They won't give us a chance. It would be irresponsible for us to do something that harms Canada's stability, Trudeau said Wednesday. The fact of the matter is that I am not going to do something that is wrong for Canadians, just to tick off a box on an electoral platform. That's not the kind of Prime Minister I will be. How is that for doublethink? I swear to you, I would never fulfill my word. What kind of Prime Minister would I be? What kind of politician would I be if I fulfilled my promises? No kind of politician, I tell you. Fuck's sakes.